This is the 2025 Infiniti QX80 Autograph, a 6,000-pound three-row suburban commuter that is, by many accounts, fine. I just don't see why you wouldn't choose to spend your money on something better. If you haven't been paying close attention to the inner workings of the automotive industry lately, I can't blame you. It's a lot of inside baseball, and honestly, as long as your car works and is covered by warranty, who really cares? With that said, there is a lot going down right now. Nissan is in big trouble. One of their executives late last year said that the company has just 12 to 14 months left to live. With the arrival of this new flagship Infiniti product, then, there is a lot riding on a successful launch. Nissan then has put a lot of effort into this. This new QX80 rides an evolution of the existing QX80 flagship's platform, but with the expected host of revisions and refinements that you would expect of a new full generation shift. The first of these, of course, hits you right in the face as you walk up to this behemoth of a vehicle. Its monolithic new styling. Supposedly inspired by bamboo, it's got a lot of very interesting vertical lines. Yes, it's quite offensively large, but I've got to say that it wears that scale quite well on its face. Of the unconscionable behemoths on the market, this is one of the more attractive ones for its sort. That considered styling carries inside as well. We have what is a very interesting cabin to run about the suburbs here. It isn't excellent, I won't say. Infiniti is still working within the Nissan envelope, but there is a lot of very attentive CMF or color, material, and fabric work going on here. The first that grabs your eye is this open pore ash wood dash trim. Accented by admittedly controversial but elegantly implemented piano blacks here, we've got laser cut aluminum insets here. It just gives a very premium feel and finish to this, and a very strong first impression when you climb into the vehicle. Then fire it up, and you get the usual, a pair of 14-inch displays here, and then a third display down here that controls seat and climate settings. Of course, this is where the frustrations start, because in proper Infiniti fashion, we have a secondary infotainment down here that feels like it's running on a different operating system. This is a frustrating setup. It works fine, your settings are down here, and while I wish we had actual hard button controls to operate a lot of this stuff, all you actually get hard buttons for are your drive modes and height settings and camera views. But it's not just the hard button controls, because they can't even get the brightness settings right. The brightness of the screens put out different amounts of light. This one down here is way brighter, and it's a cooler lighting temperature. When you're driving around at night, it shines up even if you have everything dimmed all the way down, and it's kind of blinding depending on the setting. It seems a small thing, and it's realistically not something that you're going to notice on your daytime test drive, but living with this for a week, driving it at night with that glaring up, has been really rather frustrating. Also frustrating are other little oversights. The thing is that they have put in a lot of work here. The colors and materials team especially have made sure that basically everything that isn't an interesting premium feeling material is soft touch. We've got the semi-aniline leather on the seating, as well as all sorts of other surfaces around, in addition to nice aluminum trim. But some of these soft touch surfaces are just unintuitive. Down here, we have the cell phone wireless charging compartment with a door that flips toward me. The thing is, whenever I make a right turn, my elbow knocks this door and opens it up. Not only that, when the door is up, it kind of protrudes upward sharply from the center console armrest. So when I come back to set it down, I've got this just jutting into my arm. It's another little thing, but it actually makes for a noticeable discomfort when you're on the road. Now, Nissan is trying to make up for some of these discomforts by iterating this into something closer to what you would get from a Genesis product, or at least maybe what a Genesis product would have been 7 years ago. The biggie here is the introduction of air suspension. This massive truck does ride really quite nicely, and thanks to that electronic air suspension, it's able to raise and lower itself for economy or ease of access. The ride itself is also generally just quite pillowy and smooth through these city streets. Combined with pretty solid efforts at keeping the cabin quiet, they say 3 to 4 decibels quieter than you got in the previous gen cars, it makes for quite a laid-back drive. Particularly well appreciated is the way that suspension actually responds under braking. If you give this moderate to heavy braking coming up to a stop, it doesn't feel like it dives in quite the way you might expect a big hulking SUV to lumber and sink. It's gentle and feels well supported. It's a really rather commendable brake feel. I've gotta say, I'm really quite keen on this. That soft ease continues elsewhere as well, such as with the introduction of electronic power steering here. It's nice, it's light, it's easy, it's accessible, and it makes this thing feel far lighter than it actually is. The other important thing is that accommodates modern driver assistance with steering intervention. This is a positive, though I will say a point of some mild disappointment when you take that Genesis point as a reference. You see, they are catching up. You've got your adaptive cruise control here, better than we've experienced in other Nissan family products, as well as lane keeping assistance. This even will go so far as on certain highway zones to allow hands-off, eyes-forward driver assistance. It isn't great though. It's nothing like you're gonna get out of GM Super Cruise, and honestly, even with that hands-off setting, it doesn't feel quite as secure to me as Hyundai Genesis' just general highway driver assistance suite. Those digital disappointments continue as well when it comes to camera views, something that is very important for the everyday driver in a modern vehicle of such tremendous size as you get with this thing. Infiniti is excited. They say that they've got this brand new wide-angle front view and a whole bunch of other helpful views that should help you maneuver this thing in and out of parking spaces, over and around obstacles, what have you. The thing is, they still are rather simple, rather dated. These don't feel nearly as modern as you're going to get out of a significantly cheaper Hyundai Genesis product or something from General Motors. Indeed, this feels more like the early Toyota systems that we were laughing at a couple years ago for themselves being a decade out of date. Now, if those tech accoutrements are very important to you, you really ought to look elsewhere. The first that comes to mind, and I really hate to give this one to GM, is the Cadillac Escalade. That thing runs from basically the same price as this $125,000 autograph trim and comes with features like Super Cruise, which is really the standard in hands-off, eyes-up driver's assistance. Better still, you could just go get a Range Rover for $5,000 more than this, and then your neighbors won't think that you got declined for financing at the actual desirable dealership. Also worth noting too, well, they are a different class, but the Genesis GV80, which can fit 3 rows and very much seems the benchmark that they were pursuing with this larger full-size platform, is some $20,000 less and just does everything better. Also, some $20,000 less than the QX80's base price is the Toyota Sequoia, or its platform twin from $15,000 less, the Lexus GX550. Now, the GX does come with some asterisks. There have been some disappointments with the plastics in those, and to be sure, you're not going to get soft touch everywhere the way you do in this. With that being said, that is a full size that does things really well and with a certain assurance that you don't necessarily get to count on here. With all of these measurably superior alternatives out there for same, less, or comparable money, do people actually buy these, and why? Well, definitely people are. The previous gen, 2024, sold 946 units in Canada last year. That is not a ton, but for something niche like a full-size 3-row like this that can pull 8,000 plus pounds, that's actually pretty okay. The thing is that Nissan has always gone for the value sale. The Nissan Sentras, the SV trim, stands for super value in that product nomenclature. This is meant to offer a little bit more at a little bit less of a price. And to be sure, those alternatives I mentioned will not come with the lengthy option list that you get in here. Now, the flip side is that packing in little gimmicks and features is a comparatively cheap way for a manufacturer to up its profit margins off of the same platform. Still, there are a lot of those in here. This has heated third row seats. You can have 7 or 8 passenger seating in here. The second row seats flip forward with the press of a button and actually do so quickly and with, I must say, great access. The legroom in that third row is not great, especially for adults, and it's unfortunate that it's 3 back there with only the 2 captain seats here, but it does the job if you've got some kids. We also have an effort at matching some of what Genesis offers, although I gotta say not always with the same success. The seat massagers in here are not great. It's basically just a really aggressive lumbar that pushes in and out with a gentle vibrator depending on the mood that you've got set. Nissan has done a good job with the premium audio setup in these though. The base trim just gets a 14 speaker, but here in the higher trims you get 24 speaker and it puts out a lot of power. It isn't the best that I've heard, but it does actually earn its place at the table for respectable systems. We've got other gimmicks as well, like biometric cooling, which I gotta say, I haven't really felt the advantage of in my time with it. Of course, it has been only 1 or 2 degrees this week, but I have gotten in here quite hot and steamy. And this thing claims that infrared sensors up here in the headliner will detect that heat and target an individual passenger with cooling to bring them down to temperature. I've just not felt the effects of that. If anything, the only effects from cabin monitoring I have felt are a general discomfort from the many cameras in here. I feel like I am being watched, I'm being big brothered at all times. And while yes, many vehicles now have in-car cameras, this one just feels a little heavy-handed with them. They've even stitched them into a supposed feature, a diary journal function, so that you can save in-car footage and clippings from your road trip to Disney World. Beyond this highlight reel though, you're really just looking at a big, heavy, body-on-frame 3-row. And you know what? Those have their place. There are definitely people who are going to buy this when really they don't need a fraction of what this vehicle is. But there are also people who are going to be hauling trailers that will actually benefit from the 8,500 pound towing capacity in this. That is a commendable figure up there with the best of them, and it explains too why they've put the power that they have in here. This thing runs a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6, putting out 450 horsepower and even more pound-feet of torque at 516. That is actually an unusual setup, but it makes it breathy, and it's part of why it doesn't always feel as heavy as it actually is when you're actually giving it the boot up a highway ramp. Of course, the trade-off there is in fuel consumption. You're looking at 15.1 city, 12.2 liters per 100 highway, or 13.8 combined in NRCan official ratings. That is thirsty, and especially when you remember that this thing demands premium fuel for its high compression power. So, would I recommend this thing? Well, maybe over a Wagoneer, but that's a pretty low bar after some of the problems we've seen out of those vehicles. This just doesn't quite do what it needs to, or at least not in time. This would have been a great product 7 years ago, but nowadays so much of what it's innovating already feels stale, already feels behind the times. I really want something like this to be a success for Nissan. They need it, and I do love the brand, I love the history, I want them to make it through, but they still haven't been sending us their best. And you know what? With that in mind, I can't really put my name behind this thing. For Driving.ca, I'm Mel Alder. For more SUV news, reviews, specs, tests, all the rest, be sure to follow us online.